Evanescence is one of those bands whose name instantly evokes a mood: dark piano chords, soaring vocals, heavy guitars, and lyrics that feel like they were pulled from a private journal. But their story is bigger than one era, one hit single, or one dramatic music video. Founded in Little Rock, Arkansas, in 1994, Evanescence grew from a small creative partnership into one of the most commercially successful hard rock and metal acts of the modern era. Their music blended Gothic atmosphere with alternative metal, classical influence, electronic textures, and deeply introspective songwriting. At the center of it all has been Amy Lee, whose voice and vision helped define the band's identity even as lineups changed, record labels shifted, and the music industry transformed around them. The beginning was modest. Evanescence started as a duo formed by singer and keyboardist Amy Lee and guitarist Ben Moody. They were teenagers when they began writing music together, and the early version of the band was not a touring rock machine. It was more like a private creative experiment: piano-driven melodies, moody guitar parts, and songs that fused beauty with heaviness. In the late 1990s, they released independent EPs and a demo CD, building a local following while shaping a sound that did not neatly fit one category. At a time when mainstream rock was still absorbing post-grunge, nu metal, and alternative influences, Evanescence stood out by placing a classically inspired female vocal at the center of a heavy rock framework. That sound reached the world in 2003 with the release of the debut studio album, Fallen, on Wind Up Records. Fallen was not just a successful first album, it became a cultural moment. The record arrived with a dramatic mixture of anguish, romantic darkness, and arena-sized hooks. Songs like Bring Me to Life and My Immortal became defining tracks of the early 2000s, crossing from rock radio into pop culture. Bring Me to Life, with its urgent contrast of haunting verses and explosive choruses, introduced Evanescence as both vulnerable and massive. My Immortal revealed the other side of the band, stripped down, emotional, and built around piano and voice. Together, the singles showed how wide their appeal could be. The scale of Fallen's success was extraordinary. By January 2004, it had sold more than 4 million copies in the United States alone. Evanescence earned 6 Grammy nominations and won 2 Grammy Awards, a major achievement for a band whose sound was darker and heavier than much of mainstream pop. What made the breakthrough especially powerful was the contrast at the heart of their music. Amy Lee's vocals carried a theatrical, almost classical intensity, while the guitars and drums gave the songs a modern rock impact. The result appealed to listeners who wanted emotional drama, heavy sonics, and melodic accessibility in the same package. Evanescence did not simply enter the mainstream, they altered what mainstream rock could sound like. Success, however, came with pressure. A band that rises quickly often has to define itself in public while still figuring itself out internally. Evanescence's early image and sound were strongly associated with the partnership between Amy Lee and Ben Moody, but that partnership did not last. As the Fallen era continued, the band experienced major internal changes, including Moody's departure. In 2004, Evanescence released Anywhere But Home, a live album and concert DVD that captured the band during its first massive wave of international attention. It sold over 1 million copies worldwide, showing that the audience was not only buying studio singles, they were connecting with Evanescence as a live and visual experience. The next major chapter came with The Open Door in 2006. Co-composed by Amy Lee and guitarist Terry Balsamo, the album showed that Evanescence was not limited to the exact formula of Fallen. The Open Door leaned further into grand arrangements, Gothic textures, and a sense of emotional and musical expansion. It still delivered heavy rock power, but the atmosphere felt more ornate, as if the band was opening up a darker cathedral around its songs. The album received a Grammy nomination and went on to sell more than 6 million copies worldwide. That mattered because it proved Evanescence could survive beyond its debut phenomenon. The band had not simply ridden one trend, it had built a recognizable artistic identity. By the late 2000s, Evanescence was changing from a project defined by a central duo into a more collaborative band. In 2009, Amy Lee reconvened with a lineup that included guitarist Terry Balsamo, guitarist Troy McClawhorn, bassist Tim McCord, and drummer Will Hunt to work on new music. This shift mattered creatively. The 2011 self-titled album, Evanescence, was the first album co-written as a band. Instead of being built mostly around one partnership, the record reflected a broader group dynamic. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and also topped rock albums, digital albums, alternative albums, and hard rock albums charts. Commercially, it showed that Evanescence still had a large and loyal audience nearly a decade after Fallen. After the tour cycle for Evanescence ended, the band entered a hiatus. For some groups, a hiatus can signal decline, but in Evanescence's case it became part of a larger reset. In 2014, Amy Lee and Evanescence left their record label and became independent. This was a crucial turning point. The band had emerged from the major label rock boom of the early 2000s, an era when physical album sales, radio rotation, and music television still carried enormous weight. By the 2010s, the industry had changed. Streaming, direct fan engagement, and independent release strategies were becoming more important. Leaving the label gave Evanescence more freedom, but it also placed more responsibility on the band to shape its own path. Evanescence returned from hiatus in 2015 and resumed touring, but a conventional new rock album did not immediately appear. Amy Lee was also focusing on solo work, and the band's next step took an unexpected form. In 2016, Lee said Evanescence was working on a fourth album, which became Synthesis in 2017. Rather than simply offering another set of guitar-driven songs, Synthesis reimagined previous material through orchestral and electronic arrangements, along with 2 new songs. This project highlighted something that had always been present in Evanescence's DNA, the tension between rock heaviness and classical drama. The Synthesis live tour took that idea further by having the band perform with live orchestras for the first time. Synthesis was important because it reframed the band's catalog. Instead of treating older songs as fixed products of the early 2000s, Evanescence treated them as compositions that could be rearranged, expanded, and emotionally reinterpreted. For a band often associated with a specific visual and sonic era, that was a bold move. It also reminded listeners that Amy Lee's musical pursuits had always been diverse. Her writing could carry heavy metal weight, but it could also lean into piano balladry, cinematic strings, industrial textures, and electronic atmosphere. This range is one reason Evanescence has been classified across several overlapping genres, including Gothic alternative metal, hard rock, and alternative music more broadly. The next studio album of original rock material, The Bitter Truth, arrived in 2021 after pandemic-related delays. Its release carried the feeling of a band returning with renewed urgency. The album reached the top 5 of Billboard's independent, alternative, and hard rock charts, reflecting both Evanescence's independent status and its continued strength in rock spaces. By this point, the band was no longer a new act trying to prove it belonged. It was a veteran group with a history of reinvention, survival, and resilience. The lineup also continued to evolve. Tim McCord had been with the band since 2006, Troy McClawhorn and Will Hunt since 2007, and bassist Emma Anzay joined in 2022, adding another new chapter to the band's ongoing identity. Evanescence's legacy rests on more than nostalgia. The band has sold 31.9 million albums, placing it among the best-selling hard rock and metal artists of all time. Its awards include 2 Grammys, 3 Loudwire Music Awards, a Kerrang! Award, a Revolver Golden Gods Music Award, a Rock Sound Award, plus nominations from the Brit Awards, American Music Awards, and MTV Video Music Awards. But the deeper legacy is musical. Evanescence made space for a form of heavy rock that was dramatic, vulnerable, feminine, cinematic, and emotionally direct without losing force. With a 6th album, Sanctuary, announced for 2026 and preceded by Afterlife from Netflix's Devil May Cry, the story is still moving. Evanescence began as a haunting idea in Arkansas and became a global rock institution. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.